This degree of minor devastation is beyond your capacity. Nas and Benzino didn't merely respond to Jim Jones in a live feed that resembled a virtual funeral more than a dialogue. They completely destroyed him. We're talking about a burnt earth, with no survivors and no compassion. And, yes, the internet took off. But hold on, how did we end up here? Nas is the king of poetic elegance, isn't he? Benzino has been clowned more times than we can count, hasn't he? Tally. And let's just say that Jim Jones should never have spoken since the legends pulled receipts, made jokes, and revealed decades of unspoken rivalry behind the scenes the instant he attempted to make sly jabs at them. Filthy money, industry backdoors, and family secrets. Yes, everything was broadcast. Is this personal revenge wrapped in bars, or is it just rap beef? Was a planned slaughter or an unplanned livestream? In any case, Jim Jones chose the wrong day to go live. And now Benzo's jokes and Nasha's deft takedown may overshadow his legacy. Have you ever witnessed a man's reputation being destroyed in real time, on camera? Because when Nas and Ben joined forces and set the internet on fire, that's precisely what happened to Jim Jones. The rap world ceased to exist the moment that live feed was broadcast. Pure, unadulterated chaos, no PR departments, no filters. Additionally, Jim wasn't prepared. What began as a lighthearted exchange evolved into a pure act of poetry. And you know who's getting it? The same person loyalty as if they were copyrighted. This whole affair has been simmering beneath the surface for years, so let's go back a little. Jim's dubious remarks, his subtle jabs at interviews and nausea, and that absurd tirade over Benzino slipping off in the clubhouse. Yes, they did recall everything. And with a camera rolling, 800K people watching, and memes emerging before Jim could blink, they delivered retribution cold last night. Is when things get wild. Not all of it was personal. Rap wasn't the only thing that Nas and Benzo released. They revealed something darker and more profound that has the potential to completely change the image Jim has been promoting for decades. When Nas remarked nonchalantly, "You know, some folks are really out here acting like they kings," it all began. Of the culture, but they only use high-speed Wi-Fi to court jesters. The conversation erupted. Without even mentioning Jim's name, everyone knew he was gunning for him. With a drink in hand, Benzo leaned into the microphone and spoke the remark that ended careers. Building a legacy on the bones of others is not possible, particularly when invoices from your own skeletons are still present. The screen went blank. Jim attempted to go live. His group made a mess. Then, like a middle schooler having a tantrum, his own burner Twitter account began to clap back. However, the harm had already been done. They began researching, rewatching previous interviews, bringing up old feuds, and what they discovered. Jim's entire story began to resemble a produced theatrical Netflix script, complete with plot flaws. Benzino did not hold back. So let's talk about the Dipset drama. He took aim directly at the Harlem jugular. On camera, the man sobbed about loyalty. Benzo chuckled, but he neglected to bring up his 2010 betrayal of Cameron over a Roc Nation contract. The comments section went crazy, unverified screenshots, old emails, and even a purported audio tape of Jim scolding Cam behind his back while buttering up a Def Jam for executives have all been published. There wasn't much for Nas to say. He simply smirked, sat back, and allowed the timeline to be choked by silence. That's how do you know it's authentic? Only someone who has witnessed the game from the throne, not the stands, can have that kind of confidence. And at last, the actual questions began to be asked. Who is actually in control, if Jim's image is just smoke and mirrors? The answers are messier than you would expect. Dude. Jim's team allegedly manufactured whole street fights for engagement. Spikes, according to a purported industry whistleblower who says he worked with Jones during the Lost Talent era. The insider asserted, "We had Google alerts on ops." The same insider revealed a spreadsheet with templates for fictitious social media beefs, including one tab titled Nas Plan B, that included bullet points on how to trick Nas into a fictitious fight for streams. We dropped these based on what was trending, not what was real. Take a moment to process that. To sell sweatshirts, are you out here feigning a feud with legends? Do you recall Jim's attempt to disparage Nas for his lack of contributions to Harlem? Benzino retaliated forcefully. While you're out here using promo codes to sell Henny knockoffs, that man put half of Queensbridge through school. Snake emojis started to be used all over the discussion. Things went nuclear at that point. After an hour, supporters began looking through old grant documents and discovered that Nas had actually contributed to the covert, undisclosed funding of several Harlem after-school programs. Jim, on the other hand, was said to have promised a Harlem youth center since 2014. Can you guess what's still absent? A structure, a design, or even a license? The live stream became a digital trial at this moment. The evidence was coming in like subpoenas, even if Jim wasn't there. Screenshots showing him reportedly embezzling money intended for a back-to-school function. He can be seen yelling at a community organizer in a leaked direct message. In one audio clip, a person who sounded a lot like Jim said, "Dude, this charity was the internet did what it does best. Stuff is just PR. Nobody really cares." After running audio filters, cross-checking voices, and retrieving timestamps, it matched, bro. With a Shopify store, the man who had positioned himself as the people's champion suddenly looked more like a discount. Then, without holding back, Benzo delivered the decisive blow. Jim isn't even Harlem. Harlem doesn't move like that. Harlem doesn't fake beef for likes. Harlem, don't use the block to show off your gram skills. The conversation room erupted, and the atmosphere completely changed after that. Was an intervention, not merely a takedown. A man clinging to an image that couldn't withstand a Wi-Fi connection was all that remained after the glamour and clout subsided. This is where the second section begins. Because the legal vultures began to circle just when you thought it could get any uglier. Jim Wynne Jones casually joined that live stream, expecting the typical back-and-forth clout chasing and petty sneak disses. He had no idea what was in store for him. However, what he entered was a verbal ambush. And it was Nas and Benzino who were the shooters this time. Yes, you heard correctly. Together, Queensbridge royalty and the most unpredictable wildcard in hip-hop analysis completely destroyed the internet. It was not merely trivial. It was cruel, poetic, and ultimately fatal to one's career. The entire comments section erupted like July fireworks the instant Nas leaned toward the camera and stated, "Let's talk about that fake legacy." As if it were WrestleMania, Benzo was already getting warmed up and entertaining the audience. "We rewrite the culture," he growled. This is the correction tape era. The audience was in disbelief at what they were seeing, typically quiet, reserved, and calculating. Nas had he became impatient. And in the midst of the pandemonium, Benzino was flourishing. It became ugly at that point. Like a prosecutor with receipts, Nas began dissecting Jim Jones' entire rap. "The major act was never you." With a calm but surgical tone, Nas remarked, "You were always the loudest in the background. You've had a classic before. All you had were features." The conversation was going crazy. There were many memes. Timelines on Twitter were already a landmark in the history of hip-hop feuds. In the meantime, Benzo fueled the flames by saying, "You got all the muscles, but no bars." Jim Jones. They then played interviews, clips, and even old recordings of Jim contradicting himself on various podcasts. According to Benzo, he has recordings of Jim attempting to purchase his way into the Source Awards in the past. He said, "Yeah, I got the voicemail." Jim was sobbing and pleading for a second date by requesting to be on the cover. Isn't that crazy? If that whether voicemail existed or not was no longer even relevant. The story had already gained momentum. It was more than just Jim's musicore, lack thereof, had developed over the years. The gangster rapper who became a podcast philosopher, the diplomat soldier, and the Harlem kingpin. Nas, however, would have none of it. Real kings don't flaunt their position as royalty. They simply walk in that manner. He declared, "You've been shouting about your crown so loud that we forgot you don't have one." Jim Jones was then being dismembered in real time. A courtroom appeared in the live broadcast. Exhibits A, B, and C are shown sequentially. Even Jim's notorious versus combat meltdown was mentioned by Ben. He added, drinking from a wine goblet as if he were at a roast. "Bro, I wore leather in July and still lost." The gloom was unrelenting and, to be honest, somewhat brilliant. Despite not being a #1 song, Benzino is a skilled provocateur, and the digs, which NS co-signed, were executed flawlessly. Then the unexpected turn of events. A story from the early 2000s was mentioned by Nas. Jim Jones was accused of distributing false information about label politics and gang links. In an attempt to undermine a budding artist in New York City, N.A. remarked, "You were behind the scenes. The gatekeepers won't let you into the actual rooms because of this. You continued to bring drama where harmony ought to have existed." The conversation stopped. People began speculating about the identity of the artist. It was real life. According to some, J. Cole was murmured about by others. Jim wasn't just a mouthpiece, though, and the point had been made. He was said to be a snake in the business. Finally, Nas and Benzo displayed what they referred to as the sponsorship files for Jim Jones, a shadowy PDF that they described in detail how Jimmy allegedly bought off certain influencers and blogs to maintain his reputation. Ever ponder why he wasn't in the top 5 despite having every conversation? Because the man's media budget exceeded his jewelry tab, Benzo inquired. It was brutal, savage, humorous, and popular on social media. You could sense the change in tone as the stream reached its boiling point. Jokes and sneak kills are no longer acceptable. This was a breaking down. A man who hardly knew how to move his pawns was playing chess with Nas. Benzino was laughing at the smoke and throwing grenades. And the internet. The internet was loving every second of it. Suddenly, the live cut to a mysterious guest caller, voice disguised, identity blurred. They claimed to be a former PR assistant who once worked with Jim's team. Everything they're saying is true, she said. There were instructions to buy engagement, fake collaborations, and even stories planted in gossip blogs. I signed NDAs, but I don't care anymore. People need to know the truth. Whether she was real or not was beside the point. This was now an unstoppable wildfire of scandal. As the call ended, Nas leaned in one last time, face dead serious. See, hip-hop isn't just about rhymes, it's about respect. And you lost yours the day you started thinking volume equals value. Then there was quiet. Outro, no goodbye. Just a black screen. And yet that silence spoke volumes. By the time the stream ended, hashtags were already trending. Hashtag Jim exposed, hashtag NS said what he said, hashtag Jim Jones, and the most brutal one, hashtag legacy check. Everybody had a viewpoint. Some fans tried defending Jim, at least he kept Harlem alive. They screamed. Others were making funeral memes and joking that Jim needed a career resuscitation. TikTok was flooded with remix clips of the roast. Even celebrities started subtly reacting. Charlemagne posted a cryptic laughing emoji. Fat Joe simply said, "Damn." And Remya, she went live with the caption, "Told y'all, years ago. But don't get it twisted. Jim wasn't going to go down without a fight." Within hours, he started hinting at a response. But that response, that's where things start spinning in a whole new direction. And what Jim says next, "Oh, you're not ready for that. Let's keep going." But just when everyone thought the dust was finally settling, Benzino threw gasoline right back into the fire. With the camera still rolling and over 100,000 live viewers watching with their jaws on the floor, he pulled out a manila envelope, yes, a real one, and waved it like a trophy. "Jim, you want to talk loyalty? You want to talk history?" he shouted, slapping the envelope down on the desk like it held nuclear codes. "Then, let's talk about this little contract you begged me to shred in 2009. The chat exploded. People were begging Benzo to open it. And after taking a deep breath and flashing the crowd a cocky smile, he peeled it open and pulled out a heavily redacted copy of what he claimed was a private settlement between Jim Jones and Aframer Rockefeller, executive. Allegedly, Jim had once agreed to leak internal information in exchange for being saved from a financial meltdown. The crowd went feral. Commenters were screaming. Snake confirmed Jim not being a rat again, and even Nas just sat back in stunned silence for a full 10 seconds. That silence, it said everything. And just when things couldn't spiral any further, the actual ex-Rockefeller exec joined the live stream anonymously under the name BK Truths. His voice was disguised, but the information he dropped wasn't. According to this alleged whistleblower, Jim Jones had a decade-long habit of jumping ship whenever the boat started sinking. That man has no loyalty to anything but survival. The voice echoed through the live stream. He'll sell out crew for a feature. The audience was gobsmacked. Screenshots of the stream went viral on X within minutes. Nas and Benzino just ended Jim's rap legacy in under 30 minutes. Read one tweet with 600K likes. Fans started compiling side-by-side comparisons of Jim's lyrics versus his real-life moves, branding him the king of contradiction. But it wasn't just social media. Within hours, repercussions were felt across the entire industry. A well-known festival in Atlanta quietly dropped Jim Jones from their headliner list. Promoters said it was due to unexpected scheduling conflicts, but everyone knew what time it was. Record labels began pulling old collaborative promo materials with his name. And rumors began circulating that even his longtime friend and collaborator Cameron was considering issuing a statement to separate himself from the drama. Even more damning, a leaked audio clip surfaced of an alleged conversation between Jim and APR crisis team, where he was heard saying, "Man, I didn't think Nas and Zeno would really go there. I thought they'd keep it cute. Oh no Jim, not this time." Back on the live stream, NS took the moment to deliver the final blow. Calm, cold, calculated. He stared straight into the camera lens, his voice low but sharp as a blade. "This isn't about hate. The truth is at issue here, and if it burns, maybe it was sitting too close to the fire." Boom. Clips of that quote are now plastered all over TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. Hell, even fan-made edits with cinematic music underneath. Gen Z is treating it like a battle cry. "You were sitting too close to the fire" might as well be the quote of the decade now. Meanwhile, Jim tried to clap back with his own IG Live 2 days later, but the damage was done. The energy was off. His voice cracked. His eyes flashed all over the place, like he was reading a script. He talked about being misunderstood, always keeping it honest, and how some persons feel bitter they are not relevant anymore. But let's be honest, no one was buying it, and just as he was trying to explain himself, an ex-Dipet producer suddenly stepped into the comment section, dropping cryptic messages like, "Jim, don't want the real tea out here. I still got the tapes." Wait, what tapes? Now, the fan ideas are getting stranger by the minute. Some say there's unpublished film of a major label incident when Jim supposedly backstabbed his own crew. Others claim a documentary about the demise of Dipet is already being presented to Netflix. And guess who's not involved? Yep, Jim Jones. One anonymous source, close to a major podcast, said, "There's a bigger iceberg under the water. What Benzo did was just crack the surface. People are coming forward now. Jim might want to lawyer up." Even Joe Budden, never one to stay quiet when drama erupts, commented that the livestream was the funeral. Jim just hasn't realized it yet. And fans, they're already talking about replacements. Who's taking Jim's spot now that he's cancelled? One thread read, the names being floated: Fabulous, Cameron Solo, even Dave East. The irony is Jim once claimed in an interview that nobody can cancel a legend. But after Nas and Benzino's double-team takedown, it's starting to look like even legends can be stripped of their throne when the receipts hit hard enough. And don't get it twisted, this wasn't some petty rapper beef. It was a surgical dismantling of an entire brand streamed in real time with facts, files, and fire. By the time the live stream ended, the entire music world felt different. Jim Jones wasn't just trending, he was crumbling in real time while the audience applauded. People aren't just watching, they're dissecting every word, every frame, every reaction. Reaction videos, conspiracy breakdowns. YouTubers are already uploading rise and fall videos like he's some ancient Roman emperor whose empire just collapsed. And Nas, that man walked away from the camera like he just walked out of a courtroom after winning a case. Nobody thought he could win. Benzino was all grins, shouting, "Let that be a lesson to these fake OGs." Jim then logged off, leaving behind no postings, tweets, and after everything we just dissected the live stream. The shade, the receipts, the total destruction of Jim Jones' credibility. You have to ask yourself, was this just another hip-hop beef or a strategic takedown years in the making? Because when Nas speaks, it's not noise, it's a warning, and when Benzo jumps in with unedited fury and silence, it sounds like a funeral bell. But as every content creator knows, silence is louder than a scream in this industry. What will happen now? Will Jim Jones respond with something genuine? Or has his empire already fallen apart under the weight of exposed lies and ghost-filled bars? Will the industry for years? You tell us. Unquestionably, wasn't just clout chasing. It was personal, deep, calculated, and broadcast live for the entire world to see. Just drama. This was war. A digital execution there to witness it. Share your thoughts below. Do you think Jim Jones still has a move left? Or are you riding with Nas and Benzo? Hit the like button if you were taken aback by what happened. Hit subscribe if you want more authenticity, exposes and breakdowns that you won't find anywhere else. And turn on notifications because this story, it's a long way from